All right, so we'll go ahead and get going. So we're going to try to go ahead and get into the book of Revelations today, go into the intro of it, kind of break down some of the imagery in the first chapter, and hopefully give you an idea of why we went over some of the subjects that we went over, just from the first chapter, just from the things he's trying to tell us from the first chapter. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. We'll get into the book. All right, the book of Revelation. All right, so there's a lot in the book of Revelations. As you know, one thing about the book is that you kind of really have to study the whole book of the whole Bible in order to get a lot of the imagery and stuff that's happening in the book. All right, so when we start off, I just want to start off with a little nugget also in the book of Hebrews that's going to help us out. And in the book of Hebrews, it tells us who's all in heaven right now. All right, so in Hebrews 12, 21 through 24, he was talking about how, we initially had to go to the mountain when we received the law the first time through Moses, and how it was just such a terrible sight, and we couldn't touch the mountain or we would die, and everyone was afraid. But he was saying, since Yeshua has done his work, he said, you are now, he said, but you are coming to Mount Zion, unto the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. So he said, now our communication is through heavenly Jerusalem. And then he begins to tell us who all is in the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem. And so he said, to an innumerable company of angels. So we know that we know now that there are angels in heavenly Jerusalem. And then he says, to this general assembly and church of the firstborn. So he's saying that there's an assembly of those who have been born again that's in heaven now. And so he makes sure, he says the church of the firstborn, or the ecclesia of the firstborn, and which are written in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, so the Father's in heaven, and to the spirits of just men made perfect. All right, so I wanted to look at that, spirits, just men made perfect, because he puts it like that because he's saying that these people haven't received their new bodies yet. And so they're the spirits of the just men made perfect. They're there, they've been made perfect by the washing of the blood of the Lamb, but they're waiting on their new bodies. And we discussed that last week, but I just wanted you to be able to see, if you ever have to have a reference of who's there, go back to Hebrews 12 and look at this. And then in verse 24, and of course, Yeshua is the mediator of the new covenant, and to the sprinkling of the blood, he's there as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there because it's going to be important as we move forward into the book of Revelation. So in Revelations 1, it says that the revelation of Jesus Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, which God gave unto him to show unto his servant things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bear record of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ and all the things that he saw. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. So he said he needs somebody, he said, is going to bear record, and that's why he gave it to John. John, if you remember, was one that was in the inner circle. Every time he went to do something special, he always took John with him. When he went into the room with a little girl, they said she was dead. And Yeshua said, no, she's not dead, she's asleep. Everybody in the room started laughing. And so he put everybody out of the room, except for, James and John and Peter and the parents. And then he touched the little girl and said, Talata Kume, and she rose. So John was in that inner circle when he went up on the Mount of Configuration, and he transfigured himself. It was John that was one of the three witnesses up there with him as well. When they saw Moses and Elijah, of course, John was right there with him. So you see John being in the inner circle all throughout Scripture. And so when he got ready to give this revelation to his servant John, John was exiled on the island of Patmos. And so while he was exiled by himself, he began to get this revelation. And then he said, "Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy." So now he declares it to be a prophecy. Then he says, "John, to the 7 churches which are in Asia, grace be unto you and peace from him which is, and which was, and which is to come." All right, so he uses this terminology, and he's talking to John. He's saying, "I'm the one that was with you, I'm the one that is with you, and I'm the one that will be with you." And then he says, "And from the 7 spirits which are before his throne." We'll get into that here in a minute. "And from Yeshua HaMashiach, who is the faithful witness, and the first begotten of the dead, and the prince of the kings of the earth, unto him that loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood, and has made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Amen." So when he begins to talk about the 7 spirits, you remember we talked about the candlestick. And in describing the candlestick, we went to the book of Isaiah, and we began to show what he was talking about when he began to talk about the 7 spirits. It's one spirit, but there's 7 aspects to the spirit. Number 1, he says that the spirit is of Yahweh, and the origin of it comes from him. And then he said there's a spirit of wisdom. And then out of that same spirit, the spirit of understanding, and the spirit of counsel, and the spirit of might, and the spirit of knowledge, and the spirit of the fear of the Most High. And so when he talks about the 7 spirits being there before the throne, that's what he's talking about. All right. And so then when he talks about Asia, so, we'll look at Asia, the 7 churches in Asia. They were all in one location in what we would call modern day Turkey. You might say, well, why is he doing everything from modern day Turkey? Well, you have to understand that, back in that time, especially during the when the Romans were over us, and we had come out from under the Greeks as well, a lot of our citizens, had either been taken to Asia during the captivity, or went there, visiting relatives, and stayed there. However, they got that we had a lot of people that was staying in Asia, and Asia was friendly to us, and a lot of our brothers became citizens of that area. But we were everywhere. According to Josephus in Volume 3, Book 14, he said, "Let no one wonder that there was so much wealth in our temple, since all the Jews throughout the habitable earth, and those that worship God, nay, even those of Asia and Europe, sent their contributions to it, and this from very ancient times." So Josephus records that we were all over the habitable earth, but we would always send our money back to the temple. And then he was talking about in Cyrene, I think this was in Africa, he said there were 4 classes of men among those of Cyrene: that of citizens, that of husbandmen, the third of strangers, and the fourth of Jews. Now these Jews are already gotten into all cities, and it is hard to find a place in the habitable earth that hath not admitted this tribe of men and is not possessed of them. Now, why is this important? This is important because when the gospel started going out, and even when Paul started going to Asia, he would always go to the Jew first, because the commandment was to go to the Jew first, and then after that, begin to talk to everybody else. So when he went to Asia, and he went whether he went to Smyrna, or Ephesus, or Laodicea, or wherever he went, when he was talking to those 7 churches, he always would go to the synagogue first, and he would preach the gospel to the Jews first in those areas. As he went in those areas and he converted some of the Jews, for the most part, it was the Gentiles that flocked to these congregations. All right. So when you talk about the 7 churches, just remember it's in what we would call modern day Turkey. All right. So then he says that, let me see, he said he was going to be a faithful witness. That Yeshua is a faithful witness. Why would he call Yeshua a faithful witness? Well, faithful, what does faithful mean? Full of faith. that, you know, we talk about faith a lot, but, you know, faith, he said, come by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And so in order for Yeshua to walk by faith, that means that he didn't know everything when he got here. That means he allowed himself to be born without knowing everything, and he would have to learn everything. And as he learned, he would have to trust. And as he trusted what his father was saying, he could not deviate from anything that he was given. And so that's why he calls himself the author and the finisher of our faith, because he believed his father even unto death, even unto the death of the cross. He trusted his father. And so that's what Hebrews 12:2 is pointing to, how faithful he was. He said, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. All right. Then he also talks about in verse 7. He said, behold, he cometh with clouds, and every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. He said, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is and which was and which is to come, the Almighty. I, John, who also am your brother and companion in tribulation and in the kingdom and patience of Yeshua HaMashiach, was in the isle that is called Patmos for the word of God and for the testimony of Jesus Christ. So let's look at this a little bit more. He said, behold, he cometh in with clouds. What is he talking about? So we know that in Acts 9-11, he said, and when he had spoken these things, while they beheld, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. And while they looked steadfastly toward heaven as he went up, behold, two men stood by them in white apparel, which also said, ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into heaven? This same Jesus, which is taken up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go into heaven. And this is very important, because we understand that, you know, we're coming into a time of deception. And there's going to be false messiahs that's going to show up on the earth with great signs and great wonders. They're going to have great power. You know, this is what's going on right now with all the so-called UFO sightings and all this stuff. They're getting ready to introduce something to the earth. All right. So, but we have to understand that our Messiah said the same way he went up, the same way he's going to come back down. And so he was received out of their sight into a cloud. What is the cloud pointing to? The cloud is pointing to this great cloud of witnesses that Hebrew 12 talks about. It said, wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. And so we have a whole great cloud of witnesses that have already ascended into the heavens that's cheering us on. And he's saying, since we have that great cloud of witnesses that's cheering us on, he said, let us lay aside every weight and the sin, all this stuff that easily messes us up. He said, let's lay all of those things to the side. So when we see Yeshua come back, we're going to see him on a cloud with many of the saints along with him. All right. And he also said that when he comes back, he said, every eye shall see him, and they also which pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. So the whole world is going to see him. But then he points out two particular groups of people that he wants us to be mindful of that's definitely going to be here when he comes back. And he says, those that pierced him, and all kindreds of the earth shall wail because of him. Well, who are all the kindreds of the earth that shall wail because of him? And who pierced him? All right. So when we go to Second Ezra, of course, we understand that, you know, he said from Abraham to Isaac, you know, and he begins to talk about how Jacob and Esau in the order of their birth, and how that was a prophecy of the end times. You know, you look at that from a prophetic standpoint, he said from Abraham to Isaac, because from him were born Jacob and Esau. For Jacob's hand held Esau's heel from the beginning. For Esau, he said, is the end of this age, and Jacob is the beginning of the age that follows. For the beginning of a man is his hand, and the end of a man is his heel. Between the heel and the hand, seek for nothing else. And so when we look at that scripture where he begins to talk about, you know, the two groups of people that's going to be here, we know that we as a people got Rome to pierce our Messiah. We claimed that it was against our law to kill him. So we want you to do it on our behalf. And so the Romans pierced him on our behalf. But then he said something that's very interesting. He said the kindred of the earth, it will wail, because of him. Well, who are the kindreds? Well, let's look up the word kindred. The word kindred here in the Greek, when you look it up, means all the persons descending from one of the 12 sons of the patriarch. So he's really talking about our people. So it's going to be our people that's going to be wailing when we see him return. We're going to be in such dire straits, for one, when he was returning, and then we're going to realize those who have not received him as Messiah will realize who he really is, and that he was the one that was pierced is the one that's coming back to receive them. Kind of like when Joseph's brothers realized that who he was, they were terrified. They were shocked that the same brother that they had thrown in a pit and sold to the Ishmaelites, this same brother was now standing before them. And so from their perspective, naturally they felt like, okay, well, we did this to him, so he's going to get us back. But that wasn't the heart of Joseph. Joseph said, well, I understand that I was put over on the other side to save you and to save the posterity. And so that's the same attitude that our Messiah will have. But at the beginning, we're as a people, we're going to mourn. Those who have rejected him will mourn when we see him. All right. Then he says that he is the Alpha and the Omega. All right. So what is he talking about? Well, really what he's saying is that I am the Aleph and the Tav, because he's pointing to the Hebrew alphabet. And so the Aleph and the Tav. So this is just a chart of the ancient Hebrew alphabet. This is how we wrote them back during the day of Abraham in pictograph form. Each letter has a meaning behind it, a deeper meaning behind it. On the right side here, on here is the modern day way that the Hebrew is set up. So he says, I am the beginning and I am the end, or I am the Aleph and I am the Tav. When you look at the Aleph here, he's the leader, he's the strength, and then he puts an ox on there pointing to the leader who will be sacrificed as the ox. Right. And then you go to the last letter of the alphabet, the Tav, and you see the Tav is in the form of a cross, a mark, or a sign. So he's saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav. So you're going to see me come in strength as a leader, but also as the sacrifice. And at the end, when I'm finished with this thing, you're going to see me on the cross, and he's on the cross. And guess what he says? It is finished. So he's saying, I am the Aleph and I am the Tav. So in other words, the whole alphabet of the Hebrew is pointing to the work that our Messiah would do. And so you begin to just break down the alphabet that he gave us. You begin to understand everything is pointing to our Messiah. Okay, so even the name Yahweh, we get it from the Yud, the Hey, the Vav, and the Hey. All right, and so when we look at this chart, the Yud or the Yod, is pointing to a hand. All right, so when you go over here and you look at, hold on, when you look at the Hey, you see a man with his hands held up. All right, so that's behold, look at me. All right, and then you got the Yud, which you go from the right to the left, the Hey, and then the Vav. The Vav is a nail. When you look at the Vav over here, it's a nail or a peg. All right, and then you've got the Hey again. All right, and so what he's saying is, behold, look at the God with his hands up. Look at like he's on the cross or something. Look at the God that's going to have his hands nailed. That's the Yod Hey, the Vav Hey. Behold the hand and behold the nail is one simple way to put it. So even in the alphabet is my point. that is pointing to the work of our God. And so this is why, you know, you get discrepancy in how people pronounce it, where they say Yahweh or Yahweh or Yehuda or Yahuwah, because when you look at these letters here, there's no vowel. And so the argument is which vowel sound came after the consonant. So some people say we all agree on the one after the Y sound, which is Yah. But then there's discrepancy when it comes what's after the H. Is it the who sound or is it the ha sound? You know, so that's where you get all these pronunciations from, Yahuwah, Yahweh, and all these things. But even in the alphabet, when he says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, he's saying, I am the Aleph and the Tav. All right. And then he tells us he's the beginning and the end. He said in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Without him was not anything made that was made. All right. So we know that he is the beginning. He is the end for us. You know, with him, there is no beginning and no end. But for us, he is our very beginning. Then he said, which is and which was and which is to come. So he's pointing to, you know, his death and his resurrection. All right. So he's saying, I was, I am, and I'm coming. All right. So this whole first chapter is just pulling out nuggets so that we can recognize the depth of his work. All right, and then he says in verse 13, he said, and in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. And in this clothing, he's showing us that he's in the priesthood, and we've studied that he's a priest, a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, and so we see him, you know, girded in those garments. And then we see his head and his hairs, it said, were like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass if they burn in the furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. And so when you look at the, you know, the feet burned in brass, to your left there, you can see this is what brass looks like when it's been burned in a furnace. And of course, his hair is like wool, and of course, you can see what wool looks like. And so if he's prophesying of these things, he comes back looking with goat hair, and his skin is different color than that, then that's not him. All right, so we have to recognize he's prophesying himself to us about what he looks like. So he's not going to go away from his prophecies. All right, and he said he had in his right hand 7 stars, and out of his mouth went a 2-edged sword, and his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. Now, the reason he's got a 2-edged sword, because he's saying, I'm able to divide truth from fiction. I'm the one that's going to be able to judge, you know, discern the things of a man's heart. He said, you know, I can divide up the link between the soul and the spirit. I know the difference. So he's saying he got that 2-edged sword. And he said, when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead, and he laid his right hand upon me, saying unto me, fear not, I am the first and the last. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. Amen. And have the keys of hell and of death. Write the things which thou hast seen, and the things which are, and the things which shall be hereafter. So when we study this book, understand it's in an order. He's going to write the things which he has seen first. Then he's going to write the things which are at his time, and the things which shall be hereafter. The mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks, the 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches, the messengers of the 7 churches. And the 7 candlesticks which thou sawest are the 7 churches. All right, so what we had to understand when we read these first 2 or 3 chapters, he's talking to the churches. And that's why we went over Job, and we went over all these things so we can understand the election of the Most High. That he is talking about his elect, all 7 churches. And he's gonna tell each one of the churches what their problem is. And he's saying, I need you to fix it. All right. And so, you know, because the reward is based upon how they fix it. So he's not the churches, when he talks to them, he's not talking about people, he's not talking to people who are hell bound. I hope we get that. He's talking to those who have been redeemed, who are his elect. All right, so when he starts talking about the candlestick, make sure you go back to the lesson that we did on the candlestick. And we talked about when he made the candlestick that middle shaft right there was a representation of him, because he said, I am the vine, you are the branches. And we understand that all of the other branches coming from that middle stem were lit by the oil that came out of that main stem. And that's why he said, we are the vine. He's the vine and we are the branches, because if anybody breaks us off of that vine, we lose our life, because we can't sustain ourselves, and our sustenance is dependent upon being connected to the main vine. We also talked about that this candlestick was made of pure gold. And in order to you know, the fact that it was gold meant that you know, that our Messiah came from on high. But then he says pure gold. And so that means that he was tried, because in order to be pure, you know, gold has to be put through the fire. And when gold is put through the fire, all of the impurities of that gold come to the top, and then they scrape off the impurities. So for him to be pure gold means that he was tried and there was no guile found in him. So we got to look to the one that's in the middle of the candlestick, who was tried and still there was no guile found in him. We also see that the candlestick it was of a beaten work. You couldn't shape this one like you wanted to shape it. You had to beat it into place. And so it represented the fact that not only will our Messiah, who is gold, come from the heavens, and who would be deity, and who would be tried in the fire, but he would also be beaten. He was a beaten work, you know. And so we know that he was beaten on our behalf mercilessly, and went to hell on our behalf. And so we also see that this candlestick has fruit on it. And we know that he was fruitful, and he asked us to become fruitful for him. We also know that the fruit that was on top of the candlestick was almond, you know, was the almond fruit that had blossomed and budded. And what's so special about the almond is that the almond was the first fruit to come up in right before the spring. It was the first one to ripen. It was the first one to bear fruit. It was the almond. So while everything else was dead, this almond came to life. While everything else was still in its infancy in the wintertime, this particular one came to life. So he's telling us that he is the first fruits for us, that he's the first fruits not only of our life, but also of our resurrection. So here he is budding and blossoming and becoming a fruitful when were dead in our trespasses and in our sins. And so that's why he uses the almond fruit to describe himself in this particular situation. And then he calls us a type of the first fruits as well. So make sure you go back and listen to that lesson on the candlestick. And then when you see him standing in the midst of the candlestick, what he's saying is that these are the ones that have accepted what I did, that I'm the pure gold, that I'm the beaten work, that I'm the one that was fruitful. So it's pointing to the Messiah, and he's pointing to the churches, and he's in the midst of them. He's saying, these are the ones that are my elect, that have accepted my work. All right, so I just wanted to go over that real quick in Revelations 1, so we can get an understanding that he's laying, you know, the foundation for us. You know, that we understand that all of these things that he's pointing to about himself, he wanted to recap that before he really got further on into the book, so that we'll understand all these aspects of him, that we should believe all these things before we even get to chapter 2. So, because if we don't believe all those things before we get to chapter 2, the thing that he's asking us to do in chapter 2 is a moot point anyway. If you don't believe that he's Alpha, that he's Omega, that he's the beginning, that he's the end, and then he asks you to stop sleeping with your boyfriend who you've been with for 5 years and ain't married, why are you going to do that if you don't believe who he is? You get what I'm saying? So we're not going to sacrifice things for him unless we believe that he is who he is. And once we see him in his majesty, and once we see him in his glory, and once we see him as being the beginning and being the end, when we see him as one who's going to come quickly and do his work, then it shakes us up a little bit, and you say, I need to go ahead and get this thing right. I need to shake a few things off that I got hanging on. So he recaps it in chapter 1. He explains who he is. He talks about the alphabet. He talks about the 7 spirits. He talks about all these things so that we can remember who he is, because he's finna really talk about some deep stuff as we go ahead and go into the book. So I want to give that brief introduction to the book of Revelation. Hopefully next week we'll go into the churches, and we'll begin to talk about the churches in Asia, and we'll talk about the shortcomings that they have, and we'll relate those things to ourselves, and we'll see what is it that we got to shake off so that we'll be, found worthy to escape all these things that are going to come up on the earth. All right. So with that being said, I'll open it up for questions.
Hello.
All right, Sherry, you have a question?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. I have a question. I don't want to get too far ahead of your lesson next week when we get into chapter 2, but can you clarify the churches? Is it more like a category? The 7 churches, are they more like a category of the saints, or is it actual location? Because some of it says to the churches in, it uses the word in, using a location. Is it more so a category than it is a location, or can you give me a little more clarity on that?
Yeah, when he's talking to the churches, he's using, at that time that he's talking to John, 7 specific churches that have 7 specific characteristics at that time. All right. So he knows that those 7 characteristics are going to show up in all of the churches that we have now. So those same basic characteristics. So he's talking to us almost threefold. He's talking to about the churches at that time, so that John could write down, what is at that particular time, and then he's pointing to the things that's going to stick around and take root that's still in the churches today. And he's also pointing, and I didn't really cover this one, but he's pointing to the ages of the church. So when you look at, he puts them in a certain order for a reason. And so when we get to the last church, which is Church of Laodicea, I believe that that's pointing to the last day church. Yeah, then this church says, I am rich and I have need of nothing. He said, but you are poor, but you're wretched, and you need to buy you some gold that's been tried in the fire. He's talking to. So I believe that's the modern day church, and it's the last age of the church that he's pointing to. So it's threefold. So that's an excellent question. All right, Camille.
Good evening, everyone. Mine is not really so much a question. Could I see the slide again that had the 7 spirits on there, please?
All right.
Thank you. Yes, that one. Thank you.
Yeah, and these slides, of course, I'm going to make available to you guys. I meant to email the last week's out, and I didn't, but if I forget, go to the video and look in the description section, and you should be able to download the slides from there if I forget to send them.
Thank you.
All right. That makes sense, though,
Yeah.
All right. And yeah, make sure you go and listen to the video on the candlestick. All right. All right, next. Who else has a question?
I have a question. You said that there are 2 groups that will be here when Jesus comes back. You said those who want to pierce him, and you said the kindred of all nations the ones that will be weeping, since when you see him, is it gonna be too late? Because you said they rejected him.
No, because
Then
he's
it gets
coming.
like,
He's coming back for his people.
oh, okay,
Yeah, it's similar.
gotcha.
It's similar to, and we'll more than likely have to go back to Joseph to pull out some pictures and prophetic things when we talk about Joseph. But one of the things about Joseph was that he is a picture of the Messiah. All right. So Joseph was betrayed by his brother, just like Yeshua was betrayed by his brother. You know, there was 12 of them in all. Just like there was 12 disciples or whatever. Um, Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Uh, you know, and Yeshua was sold for 30 pieces of silver. The
Mm-hmm.
price of a slave. Both of them were sold for the price of a slave. All right.
Mm-mm.
You've got Joseph, he had the favor of his father, and because he had the favor of his father, his brothers hated him. You see Yeshua come on the scene, he has the favor of the Most High upon him, and boy, they hated him. The Pharisees
Mm.
hated to see him coming. He was healing folk. He was making blind people see, lame walk, raising folk from the dead. Well, that was messing up their game. So they hated him
Mm.
because of the favor that the Father had on him. And so, just to shorten it up a little bit, so they decided they were going to plot and they were going to kill him. All right. So,
Mm-hmm.
so they took his coat, which represented his glory that his father had given him, just like Yeshua gave up his coat, his glory that his father had put on him when he came. And so then they threw him in a pit, just like Yeshua was thrown into the tomb. And they when they killed the goat and they took the blood and they poured it over the garment, they took it back to the father and said, and they lied and
Mm-hmm.
said that he did not die. Well, that some wild animal came. But anyway, they lied about the circumstances of him being missing. So when you fast that forward to the New Testament, they came up with a plot to lie on Yeshua about his resurrection. That he said, "Go tell him that somebody came and stole him from the tomb." So you see all of these things, these parallel things going on between Joseph and Yeshua. All right, so he's sold, he's thrown in the pit, then he's thrown in the prison, just like Yeshua was thrown in the tomb, and then he went down into the prison, which is in hell, and he suffers for a while down there. All right. So, and then he, on the third year of a relationship with the butler and the baker, he ends up getting up, and when he gets up out of the prison, he immediately becomes king. The same thing happens to Yeshua. When he comes up out of the grave, he immediately becomes, the king. So you got all these parallels between Joseph and Yeshua. I'm explaining because I want to get to this point, your original question. All right, so they know that they've done wrong, and they know that they did Joseph wrong, his brothers, but they run into hard times. They run into like a tribulation period where they can't eat. They can't get their food like they want to. There's a famine all over the place. They're not prepared for it. So they have to go to the one place where there's food, and that was in Egypt. And just so happened, their brother is king over Egypt, and he has prepared a way for the Egyptians. Y'all see, he has already prepared a way for the Egyptians because the Egyptians bought in before the brothers bought in. All right. So he recognizes them, he loves them, and he puts them through a test to see if their heart is the same today as it was when they betrayed him. All right. So he puts them through this test. They go through this test,
Mm.
and then he ends up revealing himself to them. And when he reveals himself to them, they're shocked because they are afraid that he's going to do to them what they did to him.
Mm.
And he tells them, he said, "I know that you meant this thing for evil, but y'all meant it for good, you know. And so I'm not angry with you because I understand the bigger plan of the Most High. Okay, so now we fast forward to what Yeshua does. Yeshua come back, and we're freaking out as a nation. Not all of us who have accepted him, but as a nation, we rejected him. You know, Judah, you know, we were part of the plot. So of course, around the world, we're Muslims. You know, we're everything else but you know, but what we're supposed to be. And so when he comes back and we're doing all of these other things other than him, then we realize that, wait a minute, he is the one. We're going to mourn because of the things that we have done and the things that we did toward him. Not only that, but of course, there's going to be a resurrection. And so the same people who were there during the time that they betrayed him are going to be standing before him in the resurrection. So it's a lot more of this thing than what, you know, what is being taught on a normal basis. But yes, the tribes, the nations of Israel will mourn when they see him realizing what they've done. Then he said those who pierced him going to be there as well. So Esau, Rome is going to be there as well. So I went through all that to just show the imagery of how you can pull out the prophetic in the Old Testament so you can understand the patterns that's going on in the New Testament.
Hey, Brother Shoulders.
Yes.
This is really amazing. I really appreciate this teaching today, and we're moving into Revelation. But that, even I was just thinking when you were talking about all of the brothers that have not followed him, I feel like the Christian community might be lumped into that too, because there's so many different things that we believe in the Christian community, even like how you know, you've been teaching about, you know, the Christmas and all these different things. All these things fall into those categories that we have not followed him as we should. So I just wanted to add that into there. That's the connection I made to that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's an excellent point. And for those who believe in him, you know, it's their point of salvation, but we're not following him as we should. This is where the 7 churches really come in. The separation between that and the brothers is that the brothers totally rejected him. So he's talking about the part of Israel that has totally rejected him, you know, because, you know, you got a large part of Israel say he's not the son of God. You got those who are Muslims say, well, he was a great prophet, but he is not the son. And you know, so you got all of these who have totally rejected him. And that's what he's pointing to with his brothers and Joseph.
Wow, I didn't.
Novell, go
I have
ahead.
a comment. Huh?
Go ahead.
You know, in the book of Josephus, it says those Pharisees and Sadducees were actually Edomites who had converted over into Judaism.
Yeah,
And,
not all of them were, but yeah, you're exactly right. There was a large, yeah, we'll really get into that. Yeah.
Yeah, so they when Christ does return, we're not only gonna be able to know, you know, those who really are just know how Christ is gonna come back. It's not gonna really be no. I mean, Satan is gonna do his thing, but it's for sure you can't be Christ unless you come back like he said he did. He was coming back on the cloud in the sky. So I know they're gonna try to stuff they out here doing. However, that's an amazing. I heard the beginning and the end. That's amazing. You know, the top and that's amazing to hear that.
Yeah, it's I'm telling you, it's powerful. It's powerful when you really get into the depth of what he's trying to
it's a
tell
good
us.
lesson.
Yeah, what he's trying to tell us about himself. So it's powerful
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Hey, Kendall, question for you.
Okay.
Right.
You spoke about this. You spoke about the 7 churches there, and you had mentioned that there was an order to which he had spoken to them. Now, we know that there are 2 churches where he had some very nice things to say, and he was trying to encourage them. So how does that play out? You know, I understand Laodicea is the last church, but how do these 2 churches where he spoke well of them, how do they kind of play out over time?
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to really get in there and look at the order. But he talked to, I know, Ephesus first, right? And he told Ephesus, you guys have done some great things, but I got a problem with you. You know, you have forgotten your first love. And so, you know, let's go ahead and just look at it and get into it, since that's a question.
Yeah, the first church that he spoke well of was Smyrna in chapter 2. Looks like it's verse 8.
Yeah, he talks to Smyrna. And of course, Smyrna is kind of pointing to almost like one of the first churches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were, you know, it seems like they had the better doctrine. You know, Ephesus wasn't too far off, but you know, but he wanted Ephesus to get some things right. So let's look at Ephesus. So he said, unto the angel of the church of Ephesus, write, these things says he that holdeth the 7 stars in his right hand, who walketh in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. I know thy works, and thy labor, and thy patience, and how thou canst not bear them which are evil. So he's saying, you know, this is good. He said, and thou hast tried them which say that they are apostles and are not, and has found them liars. That's a good thing. And he said, and has borne and has patience, and for my name's sake has labored and has not fainted. So he said, you're bearing fruit because you're patient. Patience is it's something that, you know, is a fruit. You know, it comes out of relationship. He said, nevertheless, I have somewhat against thee because thou hast left thy first love. He said, remember therefore from whence thou art fallen, and repent and do the first works, or else I will come to thee quickly and remove that candlestick out of his place, except thou repent. All right, so he's reminding this church, I know you're doing some great things, but the first thing that you need to be doing is me. And oftentimes we get caught up in doing his works rather than having, the first thing is his relationship with him. And so he warns this church, and he's hoping that if we have that issue and we see it in ourselves, that we can see, because sometimes we do get caught up in doing the things of God and not doing God himself. I hope that makes sense. So he's saying, I need you to stop doing that first, and I need you to come back to your first love. And then he said, repent, because you've fallen. So he's saying, if we're putting his works before we're putting him, he said, you need to repent. You're basically in sin, because we've fallen away from the first commandment. With I love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy soul and all thy mind. Then love your neighbor as you do yourself. Well, I'm not loving him with all my heart, soul, and mind. I'm loving the work more than I'm loving him.
And so it sounds like this connects to those people in Matthew 7, where he says, you know, I did all these things in your name, but he says, depart from me, you workers of iniquity, because I never knew you.
Right. They were caught up in all of the giftings and all of the work, and they forgot about him, you know. And you see that in a lot of the churches now. You know, it's and then it becomes all about prosperity. It becomes about all these other things. How can the 7 ways to get God to bless you? You know, we come up with these steps as if he's some mechanical source, that if we just do these 7 incantations, we can make him bless us.
Right.
You know, it's crazy. And he's saying, you know, I need you to have a relationship with me.
And I guess that also says a lot about those folks out there that do a lot of volunteer work as well. I mean, they got to be careful that they don't fall into this false belief that their volunteer work is going to get them there.
Right. I mean, you see that all the time, and that's that's one of the things that he uses to trick even the false church, because they brag about what all the good things that they do, and then they rest their salvation upon how good they are. Look at what we're doing. We're I was at a place the other day, and this lady was on the phone. She wanted everybody here, and she was talking about how their church is flying down to the Americas to do the mission, and I mean, they were going on and on about the mission and all that type of stuff. And, and I'm looking, and I'm like, okay, these same folk that talk about the mission walk over their brothers that need help right here in this country. And particularly this particular church, they wouldn't even want me to come in and participate just because of how I look. But it feels good to go down to South America and say we've done good things for them. And it goes back to what when Yeshua was talking about forgiving people and letting stuff go on people, and then one of them asked him, well, who is my neighbor? Because it's some people that live 10 miles away that I don't like. So if my neighbor is just the people that live within 5 miles of me, I'm good. Y'all gonna say I'm good, because I love everybody to live within the 5. But it's that dude that 10 miles away I can't stand. Who is my neighbor that And so we're looking for excuses, what to do, and what not to do, and so that's what's gonna mess a lot of us up. That makes sense.
It does. It does. Thank you.
All right, Patrice.
All righty. I have several, but they're kind of connected. Okay, in regards to the churches in Turkey, were these churches that were physical buildings that were established by the Hebrews when he told them to go out and teach the word to everybody? Or were they churches that were built by the Gentiles? I mean, the message had to go to the Gentiles first, right? In order for them to establish a building at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the way the churches were set up then, when Paul and them were doing, they were mostly in houses. They would go from house to house, but to get back to your original, when Paul went into cities, when he first started his ministry, he went to the Jew first. So every area that he went to the Jew first. He went to the synagogue, where they was on the Sabbath. So you see him going to the synagogues on the Sabbath, trying to reach them first, and then from there he would branch out and he began to talk to the Gentile. Now, when he was ended up being rejected, then of course the churches grew mostly into a Gentile thing. But as far as the buildings and stuff go, that kind of got into, when as you start approaching the Council of Nicaea and the different things, they were using different temples, although they were building different temples, and they were trying to mix the worship, and there was a lot of things going on. But, we normally didn't build buildings, other than just having synagogues because we had different cities where the Levites were. And we had places that they could go and worship and study on the Sabbath, but that's kind of how we did it.
So maybe you answered this and I just missed it. So when he's talking about the churches, is he talking about assemblies? Was he talking about the assemblies when he's making reference to the churches? I know you said he was talking about the churches then, the ones that were going to be and the ones that are today, in terms of making reference to the behaviors or the concerns he had with them.
Right. Yeah. Let me see. Let's pull up that word so we can be clear in our understanding when he says churches. He's really just saying assembly. All right. So let's look that up.
So I guess when you said that the churches are located in modern day Turkey.
Yeah,
And
the people at that time, that's where the churches were, and the people who were believers were in a certain city or a certain area, and that's why he called it the church of Laodicea, or the church of, it was the people who
Okay.
lived there. It was the assembly that lived there. It wasn't necessarily a building or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me pull up that. Get that meaning. All right. So churches. It goes to the word ecclesia, and the word ecclesia means a gathering of citizens called out from their homes in some public place, an assembly of the people convened at the public place of the council for the purpose of deliberating. The assembly of the Israelites, a gathering or a throng of men assembled by chance. So it was a gathering. It could be in somebody's house, or it wasn't necessarily a building. I don't think they had built any buildings at that particular point. It started off in the synagogues. If they had a synagogue, they would start there and then they would branch out. That makes sense?
Yes, it does.
All right. Yeah, make me clarify if I don't say it right. All right. Next.
I know in Matthew 24, it says that the gospel will spread eventually to all nations. So speaking on Asia in Acts 16, chapter 6, it said that they were forbidden to speak the gospel in Asia. So I guess that's more like China, India, and stuff like that. Could you explain that?
Yeah, there was a timing in there with the Most High that he wanted just to hit the Jews first, because it was, the initial gospel was for them. And so that was basically the rule. I came from the Jew first, and then the gospel went, and then at the end of that, he said, then to the othermost parts of the earth. All right. But the reality of it, and we're going to study this, it happened, with Paul and all of them, but the church got corrupted. All right. So the true gospel, has not extended all the way through the earth, not the pure gospel, And so you say, well, how is that going to happen? And how is the true gospel going to get out there? And at some point for Israel, especially the 144,000 will be given the gospel to go out and preach it to the ends of the earth. In the book, when we get into the book of going into the book of Revelation. So once they finish their ministry, then the gospel will have been preached all over the world, and then the end will come. The Catholic Church right now, they think they put it out there like they're the ones spreading the gospel all over the world, but they're not. They're the ones that's corrupting the gospel all over the world. And they act like that the gospel wasn't in Africa until they went to Africa. That the gospel was not in South America or wherever until they went. And that's a lie. I mean, just reading the stuff that we were talking about with Josephus, and then going back to the Gospels, the first one outside, of that went outside of Jerusalem when the Holy Spirit came down was Philip to go talk to the Ethiopian eunuch. So the Ethiopian eunuch took the gospel back to Africa, first. Y'all get, and then you look at all of the other cities that were represented when the Holy Spirit came down, they began to speak in their own language. They spread their gospel from there, and they went all over the place with this word. So it's it's been said in some old writings, and I had to see if I can go find some, that when the Catholics went to places in Africa and South America, these people were already believing in the Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
But they were trying to force them into their form of worship. All right, and so they made it against the law to talk about Passover. They made it against the law to talk about any of the scriptural holidays. They made it against the law to worship on the Sabbath. They put all of that in writing, and so we'll get some of those writings out as we go along. But they made this a decree that you could not do it on those days. So yeah, so this fake gospel that they got going on is not the one that's been spread all over the world. They've corrupted it.
Can I have one question I want to ask you last week? Is there any place in scripture where the Most High is going to let us know the full story? Is there anything where he's going to just let us know the full story of what's been changed, where we will come into full knowledge? Is that something that once we get our new bodies, we would know anyways? Or I know it shouldn't be a concern at that point, but I'm just curious. Is there anything in scripture that says he's going to let us know the full story of what's been changed, what's been manipulated?
Let me find this scripture right quick and see if this answers. And it's at a point where I think the seventh trumpet blows, and I think at that point all the mysteries will be revealed. All right, so when we get to Revelations, was the 10, and when we get to where the seventh angel is getting ready to blow, it said, but in the days of the voice of the seventh angel, when he shall begin to sound, the mystery of God should be finished, as he's declared to his servants, the prophet. And the voice which I heard from heaven spake to me again and said, go and take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel which standeth upon the sea and upon the earth. So I'm taking it from that, and we'll get into a little bit more as we approach that, but I'm taking it from this scripture that this is when he's going to reveal all these things to us. Even as we stand in the heavens, because when the horn does blow, it says that we're like, oh, okay, now I understand. Okay, let me see if I can find. It said, and when the seventh angel sounded, there were great voices in heaven saying, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of our Lord and of Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 4 and 24 elders which sat before on their seats fell upon their faces and worshiped God, saying, we give thanks, O Lord God Almighty, which art and which was and art to come, because thou hast taken to thee thy great power and hast reigned. All right, and let me see. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and thou should give us the reward unto thy servants and the prophets. All right, so yeah, it seems like that seventh trumpet is when the mysteries are going to be revealed, even to those who are in heaven. That makes sense. Wasn't always clear though. We'll see if we can find some more scriptures to back that up.
So it was clear. I just wanted some satisfaction.
Yeah, he's gonna reveal all those mysteries to it. There's one scripture, and then I had to find it. It said that, it's almost like we rejoice. It's like we say, now I understand why you had to do what you had to do.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's in Revelation 2. We'll hit it.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, y'all getting quiet tonight. We might have a short session tonight.
I have a quick question though.
Okay, good.
You might have answered this, but when you were talking about when the people will mourn because of what we did to Christ, when is that going to be people that will mourn because they have not received him, because of they crucified him? Who are all the people that will be mourning, and will it be the people of old, or who?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of both. It's going to be those who were, and when we study that, all the people that's going to be raised up, and those who are on the earth that that has not accepted him but are his people or mourn, because they're going to say, okay, so you really were the one, because everybody's heard about him. It's just a matter of accepting it. I mean, because you still hear a lot of camps, they say the Most High this, the Most High that, but they don't believe in the Messiah. So imagine their surprise if they are the elect and the one that they have denied shows up on the scene. Okay, that's in all his glory. Every knee gonna bow, every tongue gonna confess, and I rejected him. Yeah, it's gonna be stunning. It's not just people who believe in him got to bow. Everybody got to bow. Everything under the earth, everything on the earth and above, everything gonna bow. So, yeah, Jonathan, you had a question?
Yes. I'm quiet because this is a really good message. So I'm trying my best to focus and listen in. I had sent you a direct message in relations to the reason why God has an issue with these last day churches, because I believe some of these churches were established by the Roman Catholic Church, because there's evidence out there that would suggest that even Islam was established by the Roman Catholic Church when they were persecuted into Africa. They didn't have the jurisdiction, so they established Islam to go down there and started to get them to convert into Islam in that time.
Yeah,
so I just wondering, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of evidence. A lot of evidence. They and then when you look at the practices and the rituals, both of them had those what they call the rosary beads, and then there's a whole lot of similarities. Of course, Catholics deify Mary, and then Muslims they deify her too. They call her by a different name. I think it's what's her name? I'll think of her name in a minute, but they deify, some of them call them Mary. They got a lot of respect for Mary too. And so they turn her into a god. Well, if you'll notice the similarity of all the religions, it really doesn't matter where you go in the world. All of the false religions always deify the mother and child relationship. It goes back to the Tammuz and the Ishtar and Baal. And they changed the names, but it's the same one. Isis, Hercules, and they use different names, but they're all the same. Many of them have the son has the December 25th, birthday. It's all related, no matter where you go. Why is that important? Well, it's important because they're all waiting on the Messiah. Y'all get what I'm saying? And they're waiting on Messiah that has similar characteristics to each other. So it's not going to be difficult for a Messiah to come back, whether it's the Indian religions or the all this, for them to unify as one, because all the beliefs are similar. So yeah, it's part of the plot to combine all these these religions together. And so I'll pull out some of my old stuff when we get to that, when we start talking about the harlot and the false church and all that type of stuff, and we'll look at that a lot closer. But it's shocking, and it started way back, you know. Now that's why so many people, you know, when you see the Muslims talking, and you see these other religions talking, and they start putting Christianity down. They say Christianity. They say, "Oh, you guys are just worshiping all these old gods. You've stolen all this pagan stuff." Well, really, there's no argument to that, because the what you call Christianity, that's what they're doing,
Right.
right? And so, you know, and people would come up to me and they would come up to me with that argument, and I would say, "You're exactly right," and they would be shocked because I agreed with them. I say, "But I don't worship that God that was raised up on Easter. That's not the one I worship." You know, and I would explain their religion to them, and then I would explain the God that I worship, and I would give them all of the prophecies that he fulfilled on Passover, and all of the prophecies that he fulfilled on first fruits, and all the prophecies that he fulfilled, you know, on the Pentecost, or the you know, feast of Shavuot. And so these are his days. So when we read scripture, these are the days that he's fulfilling things on. And so, but because we, or I just say we, church-wise, so-called, you know, where I used to be in anyway, the Christian church, you really can't argue with it, because it's so much paganism, and you know, all of it was there before Christ. You can pull up the statues of Isis and all these other you know, and they look like the Virgin Mary and Jesus.
That was established a long time ago.
Yeah, and this was like, you know, 1000 BC. So you're thinking that this is Mary and Jesus, but they're pulling up old stuff from 1000 BC, 1500 BC of statues of you know, Ishtar and Tammuz, but it looks like Mary and Jesus.
Right.
So all of these things were extracted from the old cult religion and put into the so-called church. And because we don't rebuke it, and we think it's okay, then the church, the so-called Christian church, is contributing to the deception that's coming. Because when the false Messiah comes and he's being resurrected on the Easter, or being born on December 25th, or, you know, celebrating the 40 days of fasting before the resurrection of Tammuz, or whatever, and all of his days fit what the so-called Christian church has been teaching, then it's going to open up the door for the deception, because everybody's going to say, "Well, this is what the Christians been doing for the last 300, 400, 500 years, so this must be the one."
Exactly.
So it's contributing to the lie and the deception. And then, you know, but he got people, the enemy got people saying, "Oh, it don't matter. This is what the day we choose," you know, and as if we got that authority. So man, the deception is real.
So we become like the walking dead.
Right.
We're going to church, reading Bibles, and believing the lie. So literally, we're the walking dead until we come into the knowledge of who the real Yeshua is.
And that's what's shocking about that's what's so shocking about deception.
Yeah.
Is that you don't know it's deception. You defend deception as if it's true, man. You know, and I'm reading 2 Thessalonians. He said he's gonna call the great delusion among the people, so that they will believe a lie. Y'all got to hear what I'm saying. The people that gonna believe it to the core, that is true. And because we don't repent, and because we don't walk away from this stuff, he allows us to continue to think that it's true when it's not.
Remember, Brother Shoulders, they used to kill people in the name of Jesus. When the Christian crusade, when they pursued Israel, they didn't want to do it because they didn't want to kill people who looked like the Messiah.
Yeah, it's, man, I'm telling you, when you read what was going on during the Spanish Inquisition,
yeah,
the church had us in the basement because many of us were believers in Christ, but we wanted to do it the way the scripture said do it. Y'all get what I'm saying? They wanted to do Shabbat. They wanted to celebrate what he fulfilled on Passover and all this stuff. But the Catholic Church had outlawed it, right? So, before our expulsion, of course, they began to persecute us in severe ways to get us to convert, right? So they would put us on these horses that would have these sharp things coming up out of it, and they would put weights on you, and it would gradually just cut you from the bottom all the way to just gradually. I mean, I'm talking about the instruments of torture, and I could pull them up, in the later lesson, but it's just cruel stuff. All right, and then they would have these stakes where they would grease them down real good, and they would sit you on one of those stakes, these sharp stakes, and let you gradually slide down these stakes until the stake went from one of your orifices at the bottom until it came out of your mouth. This they would a lot. And then the Assyrians, what they would do, they would put you in a tub of water, right? And they would feed you food. They just constantly feed you so that you had to use your bathroom in the water, and they would force feed you, and they would just keep feeding you. And so, here you are for days at a time, and they forcing food in you, and you sitting in your own ways. And so basically the maggots and the flies and the bugs would begin to eat you alive, and they would continue to force feed you while this is the cruelties of it. That's what they would dip us in wax and use us as candlesticks.
Roman candles.
Y'all hear what I'm saying? Okay, and a lot of this stuff was going on under the church while they were singing all of these gospel songs. That's what they were doing to us under the church.
That's good.
So, when they came to America, to the Americas, if they would always bring a priest with them. They would always have a priest with them to justify everything they did. So they got over here, the Montezuma and all these other tribes of people that they were talking to, and they would come up with a priest, and they would say, well, if you convert over to what we're teaching, we can trade and we can do all these things. If those tribes did not want to do it, they would send the armies in and massacre those people. When you read the diaries of Columbus, and you see what those people, for sport, they would go in and see how they would cut, if they could cut you in half with one slice. They recorded how they raped the women and how the women fought hard, but then after they got through beating on them, and I hate to be graphic, but the writing that they put in there, by the time I got through with her, you would have thought she was a common whore in a whorehouse. These are the things that so-called Christian explorers and stuff this is the stuff they were doing. It's horrible stuff in the name of Jesus.
Right.
So they have yet to repent of the horrors of the things that they did on their own grounds. So that's why I say the remnants of that is still in the church. And these same people who were doing this 500 years ago will have no problem doing it to us again today. I think we've all witnessed that, because the same spirit that's on those people back then exists today. So then the Pope came out with the edict, and he knew who the Jews were, and he knew where they were located because they had shipped a lot of them down there, and a lot of them had migrated into Africa, and they knew this documented in the document. So what they would do below a certain parallel, they said, y'all can get any of those that y'all want and use them as slaves. So they knew who they were getting. And so, it's the same people that's over here ruling everything now. It's the same people that were doing that then. It's just 500 years later.
Right.
Hey, Kendall. I think this is going to connect, but I want to just ask before I jump off. I got a hard stop in 2 minutes, but I want to appreciate you first about answering a question that I had earlier in this week about Jacob grabbing Esau's heel. I read that earlier in the week, and I just wasn't sure what that meant. So you answered that, and I just want you to know God used you to answer a question even before I got a chance to ask it. Also, and that's in Genesis where we're told that the Lord came to Rebekah and told her that about the two nations inside of her. And it says in Genesis 25:23, and the Lord said to her, there are two nations are in your womb, and two people shall be separated from your body, and one person shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. That's that part of that scripture where it says, and one people shall be stronger than the other. That's talking about the Edomites, and it explains why we see what you were just describing. Do I have that right? I mean, it is talking about the Edomites, correct?
Yeah. When you read that prophecy, that's exactly who it's talking about, because Edom ended up being Rome, right? Okay, yeah. So because Zepho and all of the history and all that, anyway, Edom and Rome became one people according to the book of Joshua. All right, so the prophecy is stating, like you said, there's two coming out of the womb, and he said that the elder shall serve the younger, which the elder was Edom, but he was saying you're going to serve the younger, which is Jacob or Israel. But all down in that prophecy it said, but at some point you're going to break away from your brother, and you basically going to rule over him, basically what it's saying. And so, and you can, when you read our history, you can see it happening. We put them into positions, we forced them to convert over to our religion. So King Herod was when you look at him as an example, he was the one, he was converted. He was considered a Judean, but he was converted. He was actually an Edomite. And then when you look at his wife, he married an Edomite. So his children, was all Edomite. Now he, one of his sons ended up, I think, being in love with a Jewish woman, and they had some children, but they persecuted them too. So it's yeah, and so and I think it had been mentioned, Novell had mentioned about a lot of the Pharisees were converted over. They were Edomite, but they had converted over. So when you're in the New Testament, you begin to read this stuff about Abraham being our father, well, they was telling the truth. Abraham was their father because they came out of the same lineage. Abraham, then Isaac, and then and then of course you had Jacob and Esau, but they were both not considered to be the promise. And that's who Yeshua was looking at when he said, yeah, you are of your father the devil. Y'all gotta see that. And so yeah, it's a lot there, and then they had like two different high priests. One of them was a real high priest, one of them was the appointed high priest by Herod and all of them. So it's a lot going on there that we're missing because we don't really know our history as far as what happened. But yeah, two nations. And then he prophesies that at the end, those are going to be the last two nations. And the authority will immediately transfer from Esau back to Jacob. It's not going to be anybody in between. It's going to be the last power is going to be Esau, and it's going to immediately transfer from Esau to Jacob.
And that's, I was reading the scripture earlier, I think it's in 1 Corinthians 12, it talks about how he's going to use the simple things of the world to confound the wise. And Patrice asked that question earlier about, when you start talking about the deception, there's folks out there that really, really believe that they are right. My God in heaven, what's going to happen to them? I want to see their face when they realize they're wrong.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, and it's tough. And one of the hardest thing it is to do is to admit you're wrong and change. And that includes myself. But man, I wanted truth more than I wanted to be right.
Amen. Hey, I've got to run. Love this. Love it. I know y'all gonna say some good stuff after I hang up, so I'll go back and look at the tape. Y'all be good.
Bye.
All right.
Hey,
See
have a
ya.
great day.
All right. So who's got the next question?
Kendall,
I
I have
have,
a question.
go ahead.
Okay, go ahead, Lady.
I'm going back to when you was talking about Tammuz and all of them, right? And you
Mhm.
said that was way back before BC. So my question is the story about Mary and Joseph. That story came from that?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the false part of it came from that. Like you know, the way that they deify Mary, they make her out of a god. That's not in our doctrine, but it's in the Catholic doctrine. Because the Catholic doctrine says that you can pray through Mary to get to Jesus.
Right,
That's false doctrine.
right,
Our doctrine is clear that there's only one mediator, and that's Yeshua, HaMashiach.
right.
So if anybody puts something else in there and tries to deify the woman, the mother over the son, that's another religion,
Mhm.
because all of the false religions do that. Ours don't do that. But
Well,
because it's been taught so much it makes it look like that it's okay.
mhm.
So yeah, the traditions are old traditions, and once they're planted inside of a let's say an institution that's only supposed to be 2,000 years old, but you can find those same traditions 3,500 years ago, that's a problem.
Right. So
Right.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I guess it's Ra and
Mhm.
Tammuz, so you know them. So that was way before Mary, Joseph, right?
Mhm.
And so each religion before that had that same three.
Mhm.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying. Did we get that from them? The three. How did they have the baby Mary, not our Mary, but to Tammuz or whatever? How did they have the same thing way before we had Mary, Joseph, and Yeshua?
Well, when you go back to the garden, you know, you had to see that Satan is using any information he can to make a distortion. So when the Most High makes a prophecy, he prophesies. He says, he tells Eve, he said, your seed, you know, he said her seed, and he specifically says her. And you got to look at the language. Satan is paying attention to everything. He said her seed will bruise the head of his seed, talking about Satan's seed. And you know, his seed will bruise the heel of hers. So he knew from that prophecy alone that the woman, something was going to come out of the woman that was going to defeat you know, him.
Okay.
So when he created his religion, he automatically went ahead and deified that woman, because he didn't understand the concept of the Messiah coming through the virgin birth of the woman. So he deified the woman.
Okay. Got it.
So he takes these small things and he twists them. He takes a little bit of truth and he changes one thing in the truth. Well, he got you. You know, and that's how he got Eve. He said, "Oh, that ain't what he said. You won't die. You'll be all right."
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's what he did. And so he just kept adding on to this this false doctrine as he went down the line.
So the deception has been through religion from way back when.
Yeah.
To now.
To now, yeah. And that's why Most High uses this imagery all the time throughout the scripture. You know, even when Adam and Eve messed up, you know, he was warning us then, because what did they do in order to lie like they still had the glory that they had before they failed? What did they do? They took some fig leaves and they covered themselves with fig leaves. And so the fig leaf by itself without fruit has always represented a false religion, a false belief system, you know, the wrong doctrine, basically. So when you fast forward thousands of years and you get into the New Testament, Israel is represented by the fig tree, but not just the fig tree by itself or the leaves. The fruit is always supposed to come before the leaf. So when Yeshua looks at the tree from afar off and he sees the leaves, automatically he assumes that it's got fruit on it because the leaves are showing, because the fruit on this tree always come before the leaves. So he goes and he walks up to the tree and he said, but this tree is lying to me. It looked good from a distance, but it's not what it was trying to tell me from a distance is not true. So he was really talking about Israel. Israel looks religious, and he would say stuff like, your lips, man, are close to me, but your heart is far from me. So if I just listened to what you said, I would think that our relationship was, tight. But based on your heart, you fall away from me. So he looked at the tree and he cursed the tree, and it was a picture of him cursing, allowing the curses to hit Israel because we looked religious, but we didn't have anything. Just like Adam and Eve they looked good with the leaves on, I'm sure, but they didn't have anything because the glory had already left them. So from that point on, just the fig leaf by itself represented that false doctrine.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. Where he talks about when Peter was in the garden and he cut off the guy's ear, and Yeshua told him, if you live by the sword, you'll die by the sword. When Isaac gave Esau his blessing, didn't he say something about you'll rule by the sword or something? Okay.
Yeah, he gave a similar prophecy to Ishmael as well. They were always going to be causing some problems. And so, and that's how because when Constantine converted over to his version of Christianity, he said he saw a sign, the sign of the cross. All right. And I think after that, he said that he heard a voice say, go ahead and conquer by force. Right. So you get the book and you go to Daniel, it talks about the God of forces. All right. So what does that mean? That means that these religions will force people into worship. All right. And Yah is saying that's not me. I'm not going to force you into worship, but these other religions do. And so the characteristics of Esau and the characteristics of Ishmael in their religion is a forced religion. So you can, when you look at those religions, Catholicism and all that, and you look at the history, you look at the Crusades, the Muslims are always fighting against the Christian, so that's where the Crusades got started. All right. So then that's how Europe became so colorful with the Hebrews and the Moors because of the wars. And the Moors would go up and fight with the Europeans, and then when they went in and we went in with them in 700 AD, the fight against the Spanish, and we pushed them out. So it was a lot of things going on at that time. We ruled, Europe, for the most part from 700 AD all the way up until around 1600. We gradually got pushed out from the north, and finally we got kicked all the way out of Spain, in the late 1400s, early 1500s.
And we kind of reap what we sowed when we forced Esau or Edom into converting into our faith.
Right. We forced them. See, we were kind of out of pocket too. So you got, it's amazing to me when you really just look at, you got pure religion or pure worship. And then you have all of the side religions that come out of just a slight change in pure worship. So you got the Muslim religion that was really started off of a perverted form of Judaism, and then you have us who is in Judaism, but we were so legalistic in our approach that we couldn't even see our own God, and so that got perverted. All right, so ours were perverted. Then the Muslim came along and perverted what what came from Judaism. Then what happened is you had this pure form of Christianity when Yeshua came on the scene. All right, and then you got the massive influx to that belief, and then Esau got a hold of it and perverted it. So basically, you got a form of Christianity out there that's a perverted form of the original. You got the Muslim, which is a perverted form of the original Judaism, and then you got Judaism, which is a perverted form of the original religion that we had. So all of it stemming from the same source, but it has gone off into some type of perversion.
Okay.
That's good.
And one more question. I'm sorry, you all. You had mentioned about the torture and what have you that was used. What is the scripture where he talks about how he put Esau over us, but how they went too far? Because we know that slavery was our curse, but where's that scripture where he says they went too far in terms of what they did to us?
Yeah,
I thought somebody had mentioned there was somebody quoted a scripture before where they talked about it.
Yeah, and I just can't recall exactly where it is.
And then if you know about the scripture where he says how in the last days when they find out who we are, they'll say something like those people, with a bunch of descriptives about us, about these people who were blah 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 or whatever. I've been looking for that forever. I can't find it, but it was quoted. I don't know if it was in one of the other books or what.
Yeah,
where
it
they
may
stood
have
in
been.
amazement.
Yeah, it's gonna be like no, not them. Anybody but them. Yeah, we'll have to search those out because I have read those. I just can't remember where they are. I know Enoch says they went too far, but I'm thinking there's one in the KJV too that says they went too far.
Okay.
Is it in Ezekiel?
It might be. It might be. We'll find it though. We'll find it. Yeah, he said they went too far.
Thank you.
Yeah, because he gave them permission to do so much, but then they took it to the whole nother level. And I know Second Ezra says that we've been punished beyond that which we should have been. So
because there's no way he intended that to take place.
right. He had given them a limit as to what they could do, and they just went wild. Yeah.
Yeah.
It got good to him.
Yeah. All right.
I have a comment on. I have a comment.
Okay, you kind of breaking up on me.
Over here in the corner. It's me. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I had a comment. I don't know who the young lady was who was mentioning about how I just seen her, the one with the braids in her hair. Anyway, how they had corrupted all the religions and how all of them, he corrupted the entire universe with his madness. He controls everything in the earth realm, because when we gave it over to him, that's a whole nother ball game. But right now he's in control of every nation in the world, except us who are true believers of Yeshua. He's not in control of us, but this is part of the system, Egyptian centered. This is where we are right now. So
yeah, you breaking up on us. I'm going to go to the next one.
Yeah, hey, Brother Shoulders.
Mr. Shoulders.
It's in your business. It's in everything.
All right. So who's next?
Hey, Shoulders. This is Lewis.
Okay.
It's a beautiful lesson that you're giving. The lady she was mentioning stuff about that went on in the Foster's Book of Martyrs, and during the Renaissance when they were whiting out everything that we stood for. and it was so it's she found a lot of torches that they did is in Fox's Book of Mortars.
Okay. Okay.
And it's
You said foxes, right? Yeah. It's yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about now. I've seen that. Yeah.
and like someone else was saying, the Edomites, they're gonna be in control, but he's gonna come back and surprise everybody, because I know we are his chosen people.
Yeah. I'm gonna try. I'll find that book and I'll put it in that folder for us. Yeah.
Yeah, back to you, sir.
Okay.
Also, Brother Shoulders, this is Felita. I was wondering when you were just saying that they went too far. And also, I think we were alluding to this before, where does the 70 angels that God gave jurisdiction over these 70 people groups or nations, isn't it that they went too far? They caused their people, because God wasn't speaking to individuals. He was speaking into the governing principality, right? Is that right?
No, yeah, that's correct too. Yeah. Yeah. So he put, when you look at the way Israel's government was structured, it gives you imagery of how the kingdom was structured. But yeah, he, when you read it in the scrolls that they found, Dead Sea Scrolls, and you read the same scripture where he divided the nations up according, in the King James it said according to the sons of Israel, but really it says according to the sons of God. And so it was divided up according to the 70 nations, and he put an angel over each one of those. And then when you get to Psalms, I think Psalms 82, he talks about how they didn't govern the way that they should have governed, that they were not just in how they did these things. And because they were unjust in how they did it, he said they were going to end up dying like men. And so we see all of this in the book of Revelations, where, you have the angels who end up falling. But that was the 70, but understand too that they were taking directions from someone higher than them.
Right.
So
that's what what's her
corruption
name?
goes higher. Yeah.
What's the lady Norval? That's what she was talking about. Satan. Satan is the highest agent. But so did those 70 come under his jurisdiction at that point?
Well, the way it seems like it's in the book of Isaiah, maybe in Ezekiel too. It's he was pretty shrewd in how he did it. It said it's almost like he manipulated all of them out of their power.
Right. I remember us going over that lesson.
Yeah, we may have to look at it again as we go through the book of Revelation, but somehow through his, what the scriptures say, merchandising. Yeah, through his trade, he was slick, but he somehow retrieved all the authority and the power away from them.
Wow. So these other nations too, when you talk about, I think that's what I was referring to, all these other nations that have this setup of the baby and the mother, these all translated that same vision to these nations, and that's why they kind of are in sync with each other, even though they have different names and all of that stuff, right?
Right, and that's why Yeshua was like, he was talking about a house being divided, because they were accusing him of casting out demons by the power of Beelzebub. In other words, they were saying that he was evil and he was casting out demons because he was evil and they were listening to him. So he made the statement. He says, that doesn't make any sense. He said, a house divided against itself, is not going to stand. Why would Beelzebub cast out, his own demons or whatever? So, but in that statement, you can deduce that what he's saying is they're going to stick together. So, yeah, so worldwide, they got this plan. And they adjust the stories as they go along, but they got a plan. And they work together to make sure that same imagery and that same plan is being carried out. So when you get into all these other organizations, whether it's the Masonry or whether you get into these other religions, there's a similar story that they're telling. And if you're not aware of the occult, then you're not going to see it. Once I was established in the word and I saw the prophecies and I saw the pictures and the shadows and the types, and he established me in there, I went and started studying the occult because I wanted to be able to identify what they were doing. And so I could tell the difference between the occult and the truth, and I could tell where they were deviating, where they were taking our truth and deviating from it. So yeah, I mean they're good.
Because you have to understand the lie as well, because this is the whole thing. The lie is intertwined with the truth. And this is my last statement. You had sent us that video of the John Patrick last week from Jarvis, I think. And my question was, it was a very powerful video, but my question was, why, because I've been thinking about this, why is there a conspiracy with the Black church that refuses to look at this? Because I'm thinking as people are coming into the truth, now it's going to begin to rip away people from the established, not even rip, just people are going to start walking away. I mean, because, so is there, do you feel like they understand this, but because there's,
this is what I believe. I believe that I don't think that from their perspective is a mass conspiracy. I just think it's fear on their behalf. I think a lot of them know the truth and they don't want to, they don't want to give up. Some of these people have went through school, they've studied, they've established themselves, they got a church and they got all these things, and they've established what they have on their doctrine.
Right.
They find out the truth and they don't want to have to be the ones to go back and try to change that, because a lot of them know, number one, they would get kicked out of the organization. They're going to lose their money, everything they work for,
all the relationships with the evangelical community.
And so you're going to have to give that up. And I just don't think that many of them are willing to do that at this point. Even the video that I sent you with this guy who was saying that Black people, he know who we are, but he couldn't even take the next step to admit that we're the chosen one. Why? Because if he said that, he know he done. So he just says to Black people, the African American people, that, those are God's people. Well, okay, you 2 or 3 words away from saying that we are Israel, but you can't say it. Why? Because of the fear of what's going to come back on you. So he feeling good that he took that step, and I'm not knocking him. I appreciate you even that bold to say that, but he know more than what he was saying, and so
I felt that too.
Yeah,
like
but he don't want to lose it. He don't want to lose what he got. Yeah.
Well, but if he has enough, you know what I'm saying? You can't play with God like that. If God has shown you something, you're playing with fire. If you're going halfway, it's still not the truth. If God has revealed something to you, and you have tell the truth, that still means your allegiance is to man than to God.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Just tough decision. It's tough decision. I see it with men in their own house. Their wives don't want to, don't want to do it. No, I don't believe that. And so here they are trying to cleanse themselves, and then their family won't do it. So now we gotta make tough choices. Where Yeshua said, well, if you choose your mother and your father, or your brother and your sister, your children over me, you are not worthy of me. Okay, so now these are tough choices. Am I willing then to be excluded from my own house to follow the Most High? So these are tough choices. Then you go on another level with the organizations, and these people got these organizations, and they don't want to lose their income. They don't want to lose that, and it's a sign. It's a picture of when the Antichrist does rise up, and there's no food unless you take the mark. There's no resources unless you take the mark. Well, if you can't stand now just on truth of who people are and all these type of things, what makes you think you're gonna stand when you're in a position and you looking at your daughter and you looking at your son and you looking at your wife and y'all hungry and you ain't got no food? Where's your strength gonna come from at that point? You see, so you know, we these are things that got to be considered. But that's why people are afraid. People don't want to lose what they got. They're comfortable, and it's a conspiracy by the enemy. But I think people are just making individual choices.
Kendall,
Mm-hmm.
on what you just said, not even before the mark comes and you can't buy anything. I mean, just look at it through this pandemic, how so many people, I mean, it really weighed heavy on me when it first started, because I started talking to people that I went to church with and people that I thought, and I'm not judging their Christianity or their belief, but they so fearful. And it really bothered me, because I was like, I thought they really believed. And what it is, they don't believe the word. They don't believe his word. If his word in Psalm 91, he said that the disease, the plague's not coming to your house, they're not gonna touch you. Do you believe it? And they don't believe it. And it was so many that it shook me really. Because there's a lot of people that I went to church with, and I know that I thought that, or they claim to be really holier than thou, or Christian, so into the word. And it's just like, wow. So even through this made me realize, when the time comes for the mark and you can't buy nothing, man, I can't even see nobody standing up.
Right. It's gonna be a forced fast, and that's what we're gonna get into when we get into, like, I think Revelation 6, Revelation 7. In there, these people were hungry. They're gonna be I forgot all the list of things that they were going through, but they didn't get the food, they didn't get the water, they didn't get none of that. They died. So the question is, will I be faithful unto death? How, and that's what Yeshua was trying to get us to see. Even in that first chapter, he said, I was faithful unto death. I followed my Father's will all the way to the grave and to hell, still believing him. And so, with the understanding that there was a resurrection, see, it's difficult for us to do that if we don't believe in the whole plan of the Most High. If you're getting back up, or if when the scriptures say, to be absent from the body, to be present with the Lord. If you know that, you're good. And then if you know that you're going to be a resurrection and you're going to get you a new body, boy, that's even better. And I know we got to get out of here, and I'll let Patrice go with the last question, but I was reading in Maccabees, right? And there was one situation that came up where it was a mother and her 2 sons or 3 sons. Anyway, they rebelled against the system, trying to represent the Most High. And I think they may have taken her captive or something like that. I can't remember, but she told her son, y'all let me go. Y'all let me die. I already know where I'm going. And she encouraged them to do the same thing. Now we'll go find it. But they ended up dying. They gave it up. And there was a young girl during the Spanish Inquisition, young Black Jewish girl, and they were persecuting her parents, and they, trying to make forced conversion. And at that time, they were burning people alive. And they threw her parents in the fire, and they looked at her and told her, if you convert over and you don't want to be like your parents, you can go on and just convert. And she looked at them and looked at the 5 parents was in, were in, and jumped in the fire. And that's how evil she thought they were. I'd rather die. But that's where her faith was. It was in her belief, and that's what they did. When we read more about the Spanish Inquisition, some of the parents took their children and tore them in half by their own hands to keep from giving them over to the Catholic Church. So there were people with strong beliefs in what they believe. I'm not saying that we do those type things. I'm just trying to express the strong belief that they had in their God. All right, Patrice.
Okay.
You can answer this next week. I was wondering, with our Black churches, are they really getting such support from the government or whoever to where they are afraid to teach the truth? I know that they have that special, whatever it's called, where you're tax exempt or something, but is there really something we don't know about that's really supporting these churches as to why they are hesitant to teach, the truth when it comes to who we are and these holidays and everything else?
I think that's part of it. I think, because it's like, it's a 501c, and as soon as you accept government money as a nonprofit organization, then you come under government rules. And the government rules say you can't discriminate, based upon certain things. Okay. And, if you're used to getting that money from the government and you discriminate, and then they threaten that they're going to take away your status and you can't get that money anymore, there's going to be people that are going to compromise and say, oh, well, we won't, we're going to do it this way. So, yeah, I think that's part of it. It's not all of it, but it's part of it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, then. G, you didn't have anything, did you?
No, I was just going to mention, I know there's a lot of talk about, there's a lot of, the Masons are in the churches, and a lot of that has something to do with what goes on in the Black churches, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think those type things are part of it. The enemy has so many different tricks.
Mhm.
That's part of the trick. Yeah. I've gone to funerals where they come in and do all these rituals. I'm like, man, what in the world are y'all doing? What is that? And so it's crazy that what we allow, allow in. Norma, go ahead and get the last word in.
I was just commenting on what she was saying. Yes, they're also what you call the Black Boule. And these people, what do you call them? The Freemasons. Most of them are members of these churches. And when they're not telling the truth, the blood is on their hands. So, and anybody who reads these scriptures and don't hear this stuff coming out the pastor's mouth, God gives you an unction in your spirit that this don't sound right. But for babies, they might not know any better. But for those who have been around for a while, when you're not hearing the truth. So yeah, they're all a part of it. Like the Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, all these mega preachers, T.D. Jakes, all of them are part of it. Their job is to keep us in line. So they're not going to teach us the truth. So that's basically all I had to say about it. But I'm glad to be a part of this ministry, and to see it grow in the word.
All right. Well, we're gonna stick to the word. There's always a enemy in the camp. I mean, Yeshua looked at his 12 and he said, "Hey, I chose all of you. One of them get a devil." So if he had a devil, I know we got some too. So we just have to be wise enough, in the spirit to be able to pick the devils out. All right. So there's a lot of people just doing things out of ignorance. So we have to be careful how we judge the situation. We still gotta love, and we still gotta correct, and we point people in the right direction. But we gotta be stern in our belief. What's right, what's wrong, and we can't deviate from that. But at the same time, we gotta walk in that grace and that mercy. So you gotta find that balance. All right. We'll say a prayer and we'll get out of here. Father, we just want to thank you once again for opening up our hearts, opening up our minds to the truth. We ask you, Father, to keep cleansing us, to keep opening up our hearts and minds, to keep directing us in the right path. We ask you, Father, that if we begin to stumble, Father, lift us up so that we may not fall. We just want to thank you by your grace and your mercy, Father, that you are showing us the way. And we just are so grateful for that. We know that you don't have to do it, but you're doing it anyway. We ask you to forgive us for many sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And we just want to thank you in your son, Yeshua's name. Amen. All right, everybody. I'll send out invitations for
Thank you.
the Sabbath this week and also for Sunday. But just remember, if I can't, if something happens Sunday, I plan on being there Sunday, but I got a flight to Baltimore and I'm hoping to be settled in by the regular time. So if something happens, I'll send an email out.
Oh, I was going to say maybe we could pray.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, pray for a safe flight and all that good stuff. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Shalom, everybody.
Thank you, Kendall. Shalom, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.